Hey guys, this is Kirob speaking, and today we are back in the Cyclist tactics, and in today's video I'm going to show you some more info about the cyclists and their stats, and also what different specializations they have and what kinds of builds you could be going for. This is of course all still very much alpha version, so everything is subject to be changed if necessary. So I'm going to illustrate all that in just the rider builder in the single race mode, because otherwise you have to gain that experience in various amounts of races, less so at first, and then a lot more high-end races once you want to level to level 12 or such. Level 12 is the maximum level of a rider, and you start out at level 3 in campaign mode. Level 3 is a kind of decent-ish low-end amateur, not low-end, let's say mid-amateur level. And yeah, one of those riders can cause some damage if he's working hard, so not to be underestimated. Also, what I need to make sure to explain is that this is not a you suck at level 1 and you're god at level 12. The differences between the levels are quite small, and you start on a decent level already. So let's see. Novice level 1 has 18 stat points to distribute in total, and a level 12 rider has 29. So yes, that is quite a few more, of course, but it's not like he's 3 times as good or something. This is not how this game works. And also, at level 1 you have 0 specialization points, and at level 12 you have 4. So yes, but not all of these 4 are going to give you just bonuses, but also some actual flaws, which the level 1 rider doesn't have, which makes the whole thing a little interesting. Alright, so let's first talk about the stats, which are generic across riders. Every rider for each level up can choose another point in one of those 5 categories: energy, energy per turn, attack, attack per turn, and recovery. So let's go through and make a quick level 1 rider just to show you what kind of stats you're working with here. Also, most of these, no, not most of these, 2 of these, energy and attack, have diminishing returns. The more points you put into them, the less you get per point. Oh, very important to know that. And let's just put in a few here into energy and into attack as well. Energy per turn, and that is about-ish where you can get with your level 1 rider. This is a decent stat distribution. You want to be about able to do 10-ish turns at full energy per turn, and that is a decent amount. Here we are at 11. So that's a little on the slow spending side. How the balance will play out as everything gets balanced and the AI gets properly tuned, that is still up in the air, of course. But currently my gut feel is, for how the game works currently, that this is a decent stat distribution. Remember that in order to spend attack points, you need to have spent all your energy that you can spend that turn first. Otherwise you can't access your attack points. That is not true in reordering or sprinting, but it is true in normal movement. So if you have a rider that has 10 energy per turn and you want to attack, then you have to burn 10 energy per turn, or that turn, in order to even get that kind of surprise moment. So yes, you are faster just using energy, tapping into a larger pool, but you're spending it a lot quicker then too, instead of just spending an attack point or 2. On the other hand, if you have too little energy per turn, then you will find it hard to spend your energy, and you will use attack way more often than you like. So it is a balancing point, but also it is depending on what kind of rider you're building. Maybe this is a support rider, and you want to use him as just someone, as a diesel who pulls the peloton, like reels it back in the escapees. Well, then you build the character differently stats-wise than you would build a lead-out rider who kind of needs to be almost sprinter-esque. So let's just up this to 12 here now and see how some of these stats progress. One interesting thing here that I want to show you is first of all, this one is just linear. More energy per turn, the better it is, of course. Up to... well, no, it's not better. Not always better to have 10, but hell yeah, you can haul some ass there if you have it 10. That also means, though, that you have somewhere else lacking some point. And energy, let's see how that increases. So 48, 56, 64, 71, these are, of course, temporary at the moment, but I think they are ballpark right. So 7, it increased 7 points here. Here we get into the range where it's acceptable values, 71 and such. 78, so 7. Here 84, that is a 6. To 90, that's another 6. And then it's in steps of 5, then in steps of 4, and in steps of 3. So you see the diminishing returns right there. The same goes for attack. So 5, plus 5, plus 5, 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3. And yes, it is not quite as... You won't see attack values quite that high. And there are different ways of increasing attack too. For instance, sprinters do get per level, in specialization, do get another 2 attack points. And now there is recovery. You're right, you can also... One thing. This is maximum 10. Can't go higher than that. But you can go higher here. You can go up to 12 for your attack per turn. Recovery is interesting. Very interesting. Let's put this to 100. Do we still have enough here? Yeah, we will. Okay, now we do. Recovery goes between 0 and 8. This energy per turn versus energy graph is going to show you something that is very important in the cyclist tactics, and that is that riders tire out as they spend energy. And what that does is not influence how fast they can sprint. With that, I mean how much attack per turn they can use. But rather, it tires them out in how much energy per turn they can use. And if you have 0 recovery rating, that's also kind of a stamina rating, then you will see a quick fall off. And here, for instance, now this is just so that it's convenient, percent equals energy in this case. You see that down to 90, so the first 10 energy we spend, we can spend 8 per turn. That is our target mark we have set here in the character sheet, right? Then, if you're 60 or higher, you can only spend 7. If you are 40 or higher, you can spend 6. And then if you're below that, 0 to 40% of your energy remaining, you can only spend 5. So, goodbye, beautiful stat 8. That definitely isn't the case anymore if you're tired. But if you increase your recovery rating, let's increase it to like half, that looks very different. You're still tiring out, but the first 10%, you can now actually use 1 more than you have in your stat sheet. Then you have a very good period down to 50% of your energy where you can spend exactly the same amount that you've chosen, and then it drops off pretty sharply, down to 5. At the very maximum, that looks like this. Yeah, that's 9, like 1 more than you have for a significant portion of the race than what you have for all reasonable portion of the race that is left. So you can use much more of that. And, of course, recovery between stages is a lot higher. You've seen that change as well as I increased the recovery rating. So what would a rider at level 12 look like? Well, it really depends on how you would want to build him, but something that I found is kind of a good compromise. If you're going for some classics, then you would be going for maybe something like 27 there, 8 there, 2, it's a little low. I think something like this. Something like this might be what you are aiming for. And that is because you have a few turns where you can really hammer it, and the maximum speed gain you have is a plus 17. that is massive. And you can see that here. How far can you move? 27 in the flat. So this is pure flat. And you can move 27 at maximum without any slipstream bonuses or other bonuses. So that's pretty quick. How is this calculated? Well, you get 10 free movement points from a perfectly flat section without any technical cobble in there. And that means 10 free movement goes to there, then you add your 9 energy, and you add 8 attack, and that gets you to 27. Alright, I think this is showing you roughly the scale of the basic rider attributes and what you can do with that. Let's make a tour rider instead of a classics rider, real quick, so that you see what I currently expect that to look like, as opposed to this classic specialist with a lot of punch. So, if you want to make a tour rider, you still need to have some attack points because of time trials. You don't want to suck in those, so you need some kind of reservoir, but probably not too high in attack rating there. And I think because you're going to be pretty high on recovery, you don't necessarily need all that much energy. Probably a 9 energy per turn, but you can expect to get some back. So this would be reasonable, I believe. 5, but that's the lower end. So maybe just a 6 there and a 6 there. That gives you really good recovery. This might be a tour rider for the Grand Tours, while this one might be one for slightly... Oh, wait. Like this would be one for the slightly shorter tours. There's a lot of nuance there. But, okay, I think the stats are now a little clearer than they were before. Of course, they won't really feel... You won't have a gut feel for them unless you've seen them in action and felt what they mean in the context of races and longer races and tours, of course. Now, let's go over to the specializations. At level 12, or rather, let's see where you get specializations first. At level 2, you get your first specialization. A novice rider has neither advantages nor disadvantages. At level 2, you get your first specialization. The first level of specializations is always just a bonus. It's a nice little bonus that is significant in racing. So that's cool. +1 in flat gives you +1 in flat. +1 in mountain does the same for mountain. +1 in downhill, because it's a little weaker, does give you not only +1 in downhill, but also +1 in technical sections. Same goes for sprints. Well, you get +1 in sprint and +1 in technical. Cobble sectors, or tech and cobble, gives you cobble bonus and technical bonus. And time trial gives you +1 in time trial. That is also a kind of double bonus, but that only applies in time trials. In team time trials, in individual time trials, and prologues, that is. So you get a +1 in flat riding and +1 in downhill. Okay, so nice and simple so far. What happens at level 5 is that you get a second level of specialization, and you can split them, or you can invest them in the same branch. And what that does is that it gives you more of that specialization. You become more and more themed the higher your level in specialization is, but you also acquire weaknesses. For instance, this one is a pretty big weakness. You have a +2 in flat, which is amazing, but you have a -1 in mountain. Remember that in mountains and uphill sections, you are getting less free movement anyway, so any kind of penalty in there hurts doubly. That is atrocious. You probably are not going to feel all that great in the hills when they are pushing the throttle hard. Well, there's no throttle there, there's pedals. Yes. Anyway, you also have gained here the +1 in technical sections. Not only do you get weaknesses, added weaknesses, it's not linearly increasing in your main stat, just linearly increasing in your main stat, you also gain other benefits, but also you gain bigger weaknesses. So now if we advance to level 8, we get our third specialization. Now you could, of course, again, mix that. Like this one would offset your weakness. Or you could add to it in a different category, like there, gaining a +1 downhill and another one in technical sections. Or maybe you want to be a bit of a sprinter, doing the same there, but with sprint. All kinds of options. Or you could further specialize. So if we choose this one, we are now a truly full-powered flat rider. The problem with that is that you have a massive disadvantage in riding upslopes. That is atrocious. -2 in all uphill sections really crushes you. So yes, flat races you're going to be doing really well. Also time trials, by the way. +4 there, that's not too shabby. +4 on the flat time trials. And sprinting, of course, great. You also gain that bonus from there. That's really powerful too. What this does is that you can spend more attack points in a sprint phase than what your attack per turn usually would allow you to. So you have more movement, more places to move up in that regard. So okay, that one is quite interesting. Then level 11 comes by and gives you your last specialization point. If you have gone down the tree like this and specialized in something, this gives you a nuance to that specialization. You can choose freely. Do you want to offset your weakness? Maybe you want to gain a little bit of an additional advantage, trying to catch up after you've lost so much time in the uphill section, and gain an additional point there in technical too. Or maybe you want to be a better sprinter. Well, it's also very viable. Or maybe you want to be a bit of a cobble rider, and it's all viable options. Or maybe you want to be the ultimate time trialer in the flat. Well, you can do that too. So lots of options here. Now let's take a look at a slightly different type of build, more of a generalist. For instance, what we could choose is, or try to choose, is something that doesn't have too large of a negative. We see that, for instance, when we choose downhill level 2, we don't have any big negatives here. So we could maybe combine it like this, or we could maybe go something like this. This is pretty powerful and basically has no negatives apart from the -1 in sprint. And cobble. Well, there's no free lunch in here. There's absolutely no free lunch. Then one thing that I mentioned for the sprint is that this one is giving you additional attack points too. So if I choose the specialization here, you see that I gain 2 attack. The same thing is going to be true in time trial, but if you choose time trial, you automatically become shit at sprinting. So yeah, you gain more attack points, but in sprints you can't use them basically. But in riding hard by yourself or leading out, you can definitely put them to good use. So now let's just try to build the ultimate sprinter, level 12, like a superstar sprinter. How would we go about it? Maybe 84 energy? He would be hiding away in the peloton a lot, so... And 84 with a good team will basically get you through any stage. Unless it's high mountain stages and you suck in mountains, so then you're fucked. But let's just reset these. It's still a little buggy. Alpha, after all. Yes, how much energy per turn do you need? Well, that's part of your strength, right? This is the speed at which you're going. So at least 9, I would say. For a high-end rider. And then attack and attack per turn. That wants to be high. And that is not necessarily because you're going to lead out at the front and need it to keep that speed, but rather so that you have enough left over once it's your turn to sprint, and so that you can pass the most riders possible. And that's not as dependent on your sprint, but more dependent on how much attack you can spend per turn. And if you have, of course, enough attack points left over. So you definitely want to have a good pool of attack points. But before we do that, let's see. We still have 5 points left to spend, which is really nice there. Let's see, if we go into sprint, we do get more attack points. And you see also how this progresses. Boom. this is +3 in sprint. That is massive. That gives you a 3-point bonus to spending attack points in sprints, which can move you up 3 more positions. So it's pretty big. And you also, because you're themed a sprinter, now at the highest specialization, you get -1 in mountain. That's big, that hurts. You get +1 in downhill, nice, so you know how to catch up. And you get +1 in flat, so very nice. Let's say we want to theme him for being a proper, like, this would theme him to be a kind of a puncher, or a punchy sprinter. This would theme him to be a pure sprinter. And maybe even this would theme him to be a kind of a prologue guy, I guess. But yeah, so flat. And we go for that. And we assume that we are riding a flat stage. And now we see this is what we're going to go into now. Relative performance after we've spent all our points. So what more do we want? We still need some recovery rating. We have 5 more points to spend. I think he's going to be pretty well protected. We don't want to lose any speed here, though. And he needs to be somewhat viable in consecutive stages as well. I think 3 is a pretty good place to be. 2 could be argued that might be even more hardcore. If you're trying to ride 2s with him, then 2 is definitely too small. You're not going to survive that. If you're, well, maybe a 5 to 7 day tour, maybe this is if you're hiding him well. But otherwise, he's going to completely bonk out. So a 3 there, at least. And then now we have 2 more points to spend, and I think that would be probably a 9 here. 25, do you need that much more? Maybe 29, that would make him super powerful. Yeah, I think this is about where we go. Now, let me show you this panel. Little weird looking. It has tooltips and stuff so that you can orientate yourself, but basically what it says is just using energy, these are the blue bars, how quick are you compared to, boom, an average Pro League rider? This is a fictional rider or like an imaginary rider that is a normed rider, so a kind of a benchmark rider. You see that in the flat you are way faster than, and the middle is where the normed rider is, you're way faster than that normed rider. While in the mountains, you're about the same. You're super powerful still because you're level 12, you're a superstar rider, right? So that's pretty good. But then if we go to the sprint, yeah, you're also way faster in the sprint than that rider. To the right here, we see how many attack points you have left over after that normed rider has performed his maximum lead out in the flat or on some slopes. So that means that you have 8 points left over to spend. That means you can jump up 8 positions from your current position unless someone has increased their velocity, which makes it such that it takes more attack points to jump over them. Alright, I think that is giving you a nice first glimpse into this. And I think this is a really nice system, where because of how nuanced it is not like, oh, you just increase your level and you get better. Yeah, it's partially that with just the stats, higher stats is better, but it's, oh, well, not always, even there, because of how much energy per turn you have and attack per turn you have, versus the pool size of those. But it is that if you want to be more specialized, you will have to take those weaknesses on board. And that means that your team has to try and compensate for those weaknesses. So very interesting little progression system that is in place now. It is not quite finished yet. I do want to add the attack points that you get if you choose the time trial specialization, just like sprinters, because they are riding over your over threshold or at threshold. So yes, that is one thing that is missing, and I'm looking into the balance between all the others as well. If they maybe need another little bonus, like, oh, if you choose Tech and Cobble, you get 2 extra energy or something like this. Yeah, we shall see how this pans out and balances out. I hope you enjoyed, and see you guys next time.